Hello and welcome to All About Autism, our monthly charity show here on London Greek Radio, aimed at helping us all understand autism better so that together we can create a better society for autistics and the whole autism community. My name is Dr. Chris Papadopoulos and I'll be your host for the next hour. I'm the founder and lead of the London Autism Group charity, and I'm a principal lecturer in public health at the University of Bedfordshire. Today, as always, I'm joined by my very lovely and one and only the phenomenon that is Ellie Kolatsi. How are you doing today, Ellie?
Hello. Well, that was quite an intro, so thank you for that. Good. I'm not liking these dark nights though.
Yeah, it's getting cold, it's getting dark. Yeah. And that intro, I'm going to work on it so it's even better next month.
Wow.
Yeah, every month I'm going to level it up.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, as listeners may know, on each monthly episode, we focus on a different topic connected to autism. And for today's show, we're going to be talking about what are the best and most appropriate therapies and supportive things that you can do for autistic people, and also for parents and carers, and autistic parents and carers, of course. If you'd like to get involved, ask us anything, share us anything that we can read out and discuss live on air, it's really, really easy to do that. All you need to do is go to facebook.com/London Autism Group Charity. That's facebook.com/London Autism Group Charity. And you'll see if you go there that we're running a live stream right now. So just go into the live stream and you'll be able to see myself and Ellie live. And you can pop in a question in the comment box and we'll keep an eye on that. So if you have anything you'd like to ask or share, please do. And these live streams will be always uploaded onto our YouTube channel, so you can always go to our YouTube channel, which can easily be found by just searching for London Autism Group Charity on YouTube, and you'll find all of the past All About Autism episodes uploaded there. So all of these pretty important conversations, I'd say, because we do discuss a lot of very important things. Fortunately, we've got them, permanently in cyberspace here, whatever you call it these days. The interwebs, I've heard that one as well, the interwebs. So it's there. So and also do subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our future episodes. So today, as I said, we're going to be talking about therapies and supportive actions that we can take for autistic people. It's obviously a super important topic, isn't it? Yeah. So should we kick off, Ellie?
Yeah, sure. So Chris, tell us what you mean about therapies, because sometimes we can say it in a kind of broad sense. So could you just give us a...
Yeah, so... Thank you, Ellie. Thank you. I mean, so the question is, what do we mean by therapies, right? Like, and I think this is an important point to start because, there could well be some confusion about what, therapies mean for autistic people and the autistic community. So what we mean when we talk about therapies is supportive actions, supportive initiatives that are going to help the autistic person live their authentic life in the way that is best for them, and to support them on their journey. It's about supporting them and not changing them.
Yes.
And we're going to get into the types of therapies that can enable that. But it's really also very important to say that these are not treatments. Okay, these are not about treating or curing. It's about supporting. I think support is probably the key word ultimately. So when you hear the word therapy, please do not be thinking that a good therapy is one that treats autistic people. I mean, we're going to talk about it, but there are unfortunately some so-called therapies. I always like to say so-called therapies that claim to supposedly treat autism, but that is entirely false. That's incorrect. It's harmful, and we should try to avoid that. So when we're talking about therapies, we're not talking about treatments. Autism is not anything to be treated anyway. It's an identity, as we've said many times on this show before. It'd be like trying to treat your Greek Cypriot identity. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense, right?
That's not possible,
That's not going to be possible, So that is exactly the same thing. It is exactly the same way of thinking. So by therapies, I'm talking about supportive actions that will help the person live their authentic life. Would you agree with that?
No, that's really helpful, because I think it's about, if you went to the doctor and you had a backache, then they treat you for that symptom, obviously. But it's not, you're not going to go to the doctor and say, oh, you know, I'm autistic, can you help? It's not about that. It's about if you have something that you need support with, then that's what we mean by therapies that sit alongside you thriving and flourishing in your life.
Yeah. And for many people listening, that this might be, you know, old news to you, right? You might be thinking, yeah, we already know that. But I can assure you that we still often do get messages sent to us saying, you know, do I need some treatment? You know, and we do get that. In fact, James, at one of our, you know, our amazing autistic trustee that helps us on the show, James Gordon, you know, he supports a lot of the messages that come through. Actually, does an amazing work. And recently we got a message about whether the person who's messaging us thinks that they need treatment for their social skills specifically. So James explained it's not about, you know, it's nothing wrong with you per se, you know, there's
that's unfortunate, because I think that happens at school education level. I think that's what we're here to do, to kind of bust those myths, aren't we? To say no, you need something to support and sit alongside what you need support with. So, you know, maybe we can get into what James said a little bit later, but it kind of aligns to some of the other things that I'm sure we're going to cover. But the point is that we do still get these questions quite often about, you know, what treatments are there, but you can't treat something like this. It's an identity. So it is.
Okay, so Ellie, I might have a question for you now. What are some of the best ways to support an autistic person with their speech and sensory related issues? Because obviously those come up quite a lot, don't they? Speech and sensory.
I can talk about my son because he was deemed as not speaking early enough for reaching his milestone. So when he was at nursery, they offered speech and language. So I didn't really see it as a problem. I was like, okay, then whatever, let's go for it. The only reason why I did that was because he was getting frustrated with not being able to express himself. So for him, the speech and language wasn't, oh, you're going to speak now. It wasn't about that, and that wasn't my expectation. I didn't want that to happen like overnight, whatever. So it was very much exercises. It was a tailored package for him it was fun. So it was enabling him in a fun way for a child to do whatever he needed to do. So blow bubbles, sing songs, repetitive, turn taking, game playing. Also in a group, that was important as well. So he was in a group, it wasn't a solo thing. Also with his sensory.
Can I just pick up on the speech thing?
Yes.
Just with regards to speech, I think the point you're making that the speech therapist really worked with to sort of leverage your son's interests. I think that is really, really important. So in terms of like, you know, what kind of speech and language therapy I tend to recommend, it would be the type that what I would call is neurodivergent affirming, in the sense that, you know, it's about recognizing that speech and language are done differently, it's not technically wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's not, we shouldn't pathologize it.
No.
And I think some speech and language therapists do pathologize it a lot, and so it's very much about, oh, don't do that, don't say that, say that. You know, or don't make that noise.
Okay.
You know, that's that noise is inappropriate. Do you know what I mean?
Luckily, I didn't have that.
You didn't have that.
I can understand that. Yeah.
So, you know, kind of what's important is that to understand is that speech and language therapy is a recommended therapy, but not all speech and language therapies are gonna be ideal.
Absolutely.
So ones that really leverage the I really like what you said about, you know, you've got to get in their world, you know, and like understand their passions, their dedicated interests, and sort of fit into their communication style and work with it, and develop their communication journey, and not try to get them off their road onto your road.
That's right.
It's more about progressing them on their own road rather than getting them on a different road.
So it was like fun exercises. So they gave us whatever they were doing in that space. I was able to sort of take that and do it in our way,
Your way,
in our
home.
safe space.
That's the other thing. Doing it in a safe, but doing it in the right environment, the right time.
It wasn't, prescribed. Come on, now it's time to do this. It wasn't like that. If we were out in the garden or his sister was doing bubbles, then we'd be blowing bubbles or blowing through the straws, you know, and you're told not to do that. Yeah. You'd be blowing bubbles so it was really doing the muscles of the facial muscles.
Yeah, I remember my son, he's always had difficulties with speech and language, and he had what you would call delayed, speech and language. And we also found him a phenomenal speech and language therapist that would come to our house, and which would be in his safe space, which is very important, and play guitar with him and sing and sort of and make it fun, very low demand, because whenever you do any of these therapies, it's got to be low demand. You don't
can you just explain a bit?
So you don't want, as a therapist, you don't want to be telling the child or whoever it is getting the therapy to do difficult things that make them stress out or require kind of mental effort, mental energy. Instead it's got to be more experiential rather than request or you know what I mean. It's even worse if you do a request for them to say certain sentences, that's going to be a demand. But it's going to be even worse if you say, oh no, that's wrong, do it this way. Do you know what I mean? Do it again, that's wrong, and trying to sort of beat them into it. That defeats the object, doesn't it? But you do get speech therapists like that, unfortunately. You do.
Well, that's good to point that out, because that's not what we're advocating. We're advocating about the low demand, as you said.
Low demand,
and
safe
also
space.
Safe space, and getting into their world, really. And making it fun. And if you find, if you're listening and you're looking for a speech therapist and you find someone like that who's very neurodivergent affirming, that would be the question actually to ask. If you're interviewing sort of or shortlisting for speech and language therapists, that's a good
ask them,
good point.
how are you neurodivergent affirming? And if they don't understand what you mean by that, then it's not a good speech therapist. Run for the hills. So ask them that question, and then see what they say. I think that would be a good indicator. Good, but if you do find a good one, they're like gold, don't you think? I mean, really, speech and language is really important.
Definitely.
Really, really useful. So we definitely advocate for that. Just quickly with regard to speech therapy before we move on to sensory. The other thing is to say that there's different types of communication mechanisms for non-speaking people, because some people just not speaking or minimally speaking, and so they're going to need, rather than to be beaten into being speaking when that's just not them, they're going to actually need to be supported into communicating in a way that works for them. And a type of approach to that is called AAC, which is augmentative and alternative communication.
Can you say a bit more about that?
So that is basically a set of tools that people that have expertise in communication can use to support other people's non-speaking communication. So for example, things like picture communication boards, letterboards, speech generating devices. So maybe the person who's non-speaking might be able to type out what they're saying, and then the laptop or the phone might speak it out.
Technology.
Using assistive technology. Obviously sign language is part of it. And another one lastly is something called CRPs, which are communication regulation partners, which are quite popular I think they're more popular in the States than over here, but they are very good. I know one non-speaking guy in the States who's very good. If you want to look him up, he's an advocate online called Benjamin Brew, Breaux, and he's non-speaking, does a lot of advocacy work, but he uses communication regulation partners, so essentially people who help him to regulate and communicate at the same time. Basically.
They're a person?
So somebody that kind of
like a buddy.
becomes part of the family almost. They become like a trusted person in the family, and they're like a bridge of communication in a way.
Amazing.
That really understand what what that person's trying to say and support them to do it, you know,
so
in a low demand way.
So there's so many different ways though, isn't there? It's not just speech.
Yeah.
That I think that's really important.
Yeah.
To kind of get across.
100%. Yeah. But unfortunately, the reality is society has decided to build itself around massively prioritising speech, and we massively stigmatise non-speaking people. If you're not a fluent, articulate speaking person, or you struggle with speaking, or you don't speak at all, you're massively disadvantaged in this society because we stigmatise it. It's like not fair at all. So when in fact I think research shows that most communication is non-speaking, you know, eye contact and the kind of non-verbal language, you know.
Well, it is for therapies anyway. As soon as you walk through the door, that's communication.
Yeah. So really good stuff there. You wanted to talk about sensory related.
Yeah, sensory. So also I can talk about my son there. His experience of that was occupational therapy, which we needed. He had I can't say this word, proprioception.
Proprioception?
Yeah. So spatial awareness and balance. He had difficulty with, because he had problems with his ear as well. That didn't help. So his balance was a bit off. And certain patterns on the floor, he would. So if there was like big tiles, so we used to have real difficulties going into shopping centres and shiny surfaces. It used to feel like he was going to fall into it. I don't know how to explain it, but that's all to do with that kind of sensory balance.
That's the proprioception, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly.
Balance,
So they gave us lots of activities to do again. Fun. Let's make exercises. So we'd push against the wall. Let's see who can, move the wall. That kind of stuff. I'd come and help me with the shopping. So I used to give him tins to walk around with. I mean, he didn't really know what he was doing, but I knew because these were the exercises that I was told to sort of carry on with him when he was out of the room. Also, deep touch. He liked that kind of press.
Deep pressure.
Deep pressure. He liked that. And brushing. We tried that for a while. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
Technique. Yeah, it was this special brush, not like a hairbrush, but he quite liked that. So he's quite. So
he's very sort of input. He's a sort of sensory seeker when it comes to tactile.
Yes.
Tactile.
Yeah. He seeks a lot of that.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? With sensory, everybody's sensory, right? Everyone's sensory,
absolutely.
And understanding your own, if you're autistic or your autistic family member, who it is you're trying to support, child, whatever, understanding their sensory profile is so important, isn't it? Like understanding, they could be kind of sensory seeking in terms of tactile, but auditory they may not be.
No.
You get this often like a spiky profile where you're kind of seeking in some senses and not in others. The tactile, the auditory sense. You've got taste.
Yes.
What else you got? What am I forgetting? Proprioception.
Yes.
There's lots of senses.
There's lots of sensory things.
I'm drawing a blank in terms of all the senses, but I think there's like 27 senses or something like that. That's what I've heard.
Yeah. But that could be tricky because he likes to be touched. I don't. So we've got to find the kind of a happy medium where there's a time where I can do it to him, but leave me alone. Don't touch me.
Yeah.
So that's my profile.
I've seen that, if somebody's let's say somebody's very sensory avoidant, they don't want the input, they want to avoid it, but in terms of tactile, let's say they don't like to be touched, for example, it's going to always be the case that you shouldn't really touch them. Then you should let it be.
Right.
But certainly do not touch them if they're dysregulated.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
if they're not, they're not.
When you say dysregulated, can you just explain a bit about that?
That they're not. It's a hard way to. It's a hard term to explain. Really, you might need to help me. But it's being dysregulated means you're off. You're mentally, psychologically off kilter.
Something's happened to trigger a kind of response that is perhaps going into meltdown as well.
Yeah. So it's the kind of beginnings of meltdown, maybe. So if you're not regulated, you don't have internal balance. Maybe is one way of putting it. So if somebody's having a meltdown, for example, and they're dysregulated, and they're avoidant of tactile, then don't, because that could result in a shutdown or something like that. So, understanding the profile is the most important thing. OTs will be able to, occupational therapists can do like a full assessment often, if you can find a good occupational therapist. But even anecdotally, informally, as a parent or as your own person, as your own autistic person, you can work it out often as to, you just have to systematically work it out yourself, if you can,
exactly
what you are. But it's worth trying to work out.
For sure. So seamlessly we can go into the next question, Chris. So what are some of the best ways to support an autistic person with their mental health and prevent meltdowns, shutdowns and burnouts?
Yeah, well, there's so many things really, isn't there? Well-being. I mean, the stuff about sensory and speech that we've been talking about definitely connects into it. I mean, I'll talk about other things. We can talk about other things as well. But I do think the two worlds, the first question about sensory and speech, and the second question about well-being, they connect, they connect massively. If you're struggling to communicate what you need to communicate to the outside world, and your kind of sensory experience is all fuzzy and messed up, and the environment isn't sort of isn't appropriate for your sensory systems, then your mental health and well-being are going to be affected massively. And before we get on to discussing the specific kind of mental health related or well-being related therapies, just wanted to add a couple of additional points to the sensory one, because I think it links to the mental health one anyway. So adapting the environment, isn't it, Ellie? Do you know what I mean?
Adjustments,
adjusting the environment, like what you were saying about the brushing and the deep pressure. I've written down a few things here that relate to this. So you might want to, depending on your sensory profile, it all depends on what your sensory profile. If you're avoidant or sensory seeking, so it kind of all depends. But some people do to tailor their environments, because that's what it is ultimately. You've got to try and tailor the environment to work with the sensory person profile of the person. You could dim the lighting, for example. Lighting can make a big difference.
Yes, that's true.
Like in here, for example, personally, it matches my sensory.
Oh, you like it bright?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's too bright. That's the thing. It's kind of like,
it is quite bright.
It's bright for you.
Yeah.
See, for me, if it was much brighter than this, then I would not be able to be in the zone as much, for sure. Yeah. And equally, if it was much darker, I would be struggling.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a good balance. Yeah, but for you, it's a bit bright.
There's something that's these spotlights are quite bright.
Oh, well, now we know to tailor the environment.
Yes.
I need to get some sort of
dimmer. Is there a dimmer here?
I'll get a knife and whack the spotlight.
No, it actually keeps me awake, so that's quite good.
Yeah. So lighting is a big one. Like the smell of the room as well, of course. Like this room, for example, doesn't really have any smell as far as I can tell.
I think colognes and fragrances really make my nose itch.
Yeah. You see, that can throw someone, right? Yeah. Especially if they're very sensory with their smell. Then you said weighted blankets. Yeah. Can you explain what a weighted blanket is? Because people may not realise.
Yeah, so they're readily available, actually. I saw one in a chain last week being sold. So basically they are a heavy blanket that you put to reduce anxiety. That's how they kind of sell them, really. Yeah. And it's something that helps you kind of regulate, doesn't it? Less. It keeps you in place, it keeps you snug, it keeps you tight. That's the idea. It's a bit like a baby when you swaddle them, isn't it? Is it that idea, do you think?
Yeah, I guess so.
Like
yeah.
Where you feel contained and safe going to sleep, or snuggling in your comfort spot, or doing whatever you like to do.
Yeah, you could even be sitting like we are and just have it on your lap, right? It's like, I think, like you say, it's safety.
My son had one in school. I got him a small one. On his lap.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Did it help him? Did he like it?
No. I didn't like it.
And they're quite expensive, aren't they?
They are very expensive. I think some other kid used it. That's fine.
Oh, right. Yeah. I don't think they had them when we were younger, though. I don't remember them. Yeah, I've only sort of
like
begun
that.
to notice weighted blankets, but they're very popular.
Very
they're very
popular.
I mean, it's worth a try if you think that you're,
absolutely.
you know, that you're someone that might benefit from that kind of sensory input, that weight.
Yeah.
Then it's worth a try.
Yeah.
Another one's blackout curtains.
Yeah.
Like, you know, sort of blacking out light that comes into your room, your space could be useful. Some people like soft music, like just the sort of the calmness of an environmentally friendly audio ringing in the background, like maybe some waves, sea waves, or whatever it might be. You know, that's sensory. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like that might be all it takes to just regulate somebody. You know, if they're very auditory.
Yeah.
And you know that they enjoy that kind of thing. It sounds simple, but maybe that's.
I used to have the Hoover on when they were babies, and my neighbours probably thought, blimey, that's the cleanest house in the road. But I just used to have it constantly on because it was like that white noise.
The white noise.
Yes. Yeah. And it just used to help them.
I was helping there. I thought it was helping you.
Well, no, I didn't.
Right.
Yeah, but I used to do a bit of cleaning, but I just used to leave it on. Now you liked it.
Oh right, wow, that's fascinating. I never heard that before. But it's so clever.
Yeah,
and it was this.
Absolutely.
So you got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely.
But you did it because you knew your son's sensory profile.
Yeah.
What else? You've got sensory toys like fidget spinners.
Yeah, absolutely. All available. You go into any shop really, and they're just there, aren't they?
Yeah, fidget toys, fidget spinners. Sensory putty.
Yes. Slime. Yeah. They're really like beads. Yes. You know, that's a Greek thing, isn't it? Those beads, when our boys used to have them, and
that was sensory for them.
Yes, it was the badaribin. Is that what they're called?
Yes. Yeah.
Fiddle.
Yes.
That was the earliest probably sign. Of regulating.
That was them regulating,
Yeah.
And you know, thinking about it now, I used to see my family members using them when they were stressed.
Yes. Yeah.
The most. When they were stressed, to get it out. And you'd be like, you know. So that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's a good one because it's cultural.
Yes, it is.
Balance boards is another one. They're quite expensive. But if you've got proprioception issues, you might or might not benefit
We had
from
one of those as well.
Yeah. Did it work? Help?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sensory chew toys. You know.
Yeah, we've had those. Yeah.
Yeah, chewing, because some people are very sensitive orally. Do you know what I mean? They can't cope with teeth brushing, for example. You know, and so, or maybe
and
they're
you can
very.
get special toothbrushes actually, and toothpaste, because my son can't stand mint toothpaste, so
because it's too strong.
There's an odorless one.
Odorless one. Yeah. Well, interesting. And then, of course, there's finally, I wrote here, noise cancelling headphones, which is the other one.
Absolutely. Sorry, one more that I was going to say. A busy environment, that's the other thing.
Yes.
So if there's too much stuff going on around...
you mean too many people?
No, like on the walls and that. So
clutter.
Yeah, so my son has to have everything out. So he's just literally got a bed, his wardrobe, and his Alexa. If anything's on the floor, he just throws it out.
Your son? Yeah. Oh, right, so he just likes
it clutter free.
And that is, fine. I mean, that is a sensory thing. Fine. That's visual, isn't it? Well, not just visual.
I'm a bit like that. I need...
Yeah.
So if I see something, I've got to tidy it up. Like, everything's got its place.
Yeah. But you got to do what you got to do to keep you mentally well. I mean, that will come up. That will come up when we discuss it in the next segment. I suppose we should go to a break soon. But just before we go to a break, just to say we've had a couple of comments from AJ Higgs on the Facebook live stream. Thank you, AJ. And AJ saying that she had speech therapy for a stammer when she was a child.
Okay.
And that she's also always had balance and spatial awareness difficulties. And she's also said this is very interesting. Thanks very much. So thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
So if you're listening and you want to also get a shout out and get your comment read, go to facebook.com/London Autism Group Charity for the live stream. That's facebook.com/London Autism Group Charity. Of course, you could just open your phone and do it on your phone. Just search for the charity and you'll see the live stream. But maybe we'll do the next question after the break.
Yeah.
So now it would be time for a short break. We hope you're enjoying the discussion, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to All About Autism, our monthly live radio show here on London Greek Radio and on our charity, London Autism Group charity live stream, discussing all things autism. So, this is our final segment of the show, so we're going to talk for another 10-15 minutes maximum, and then we'll wrap it up. But the next question to ask... Oh, and by the way, before I ask this question, just to say hello to a couple of people who have tuned in on the live stream. So, mentioned AJ Higgs before, but James Gordon has said hello, and then we've got Bobby Ellman as well, the wonderful Bobby Ellman. So we are honoured by your presence on the live stream. One of the country's top autistic advocates, Bobby Ellman,
Hi,
isn't
Bobby.
it?
Yeah.
So, Ellie, the next question, since we're talking about therapies today, what are the therapies, or the so-called therapies, to avoid, and why?
Yeah. So, ABA, the dreaded ABA,
So what does that stand for?
Applied Behaviour Analysis, and they've kind of retermed it as PBS, which is Positive Behaviour Support. So right at the beginning of the show, when you talked about therapies, we were talking about the therapies that will sit alongside and enable the autistic person, neurodivergent person to thrive.
Be their authentic self.
Yeah. So occupational therapy, speech and language, art, music therapy, drama therapy, all of those things that sit and enable the person to...
or should enable, anyway.
Should enable, you know,
to be their authentic
which is
self,
a tailored package really for them. But just going back to this ABA and PBS, we strongly advise against any form of therapy that targets behaviours, especially ABA or PBS. So it's extremely harmful because it's, as you said, it's not something that we advocate. It's not telling people to stop stimming or stop doing what they do just because it makes other people feel uncomfortable. You know?
I mean, as mad as that sounds, that is essentially what these so-called therapies are about.
Absolutely. And the methods used in this, and they were developed from experiments to make dogs obedient. Okay.
Wow.
So they can range from physical or mental cruel enforcement. So, say if a child's flapping, then they'll perhaps make their children sit on their hands. I know it sounds really gruesome, but it actually does happen, which is awful. And it's a big money maker, and it forces people to stop autistic behaviours, and that is definitely not what we're advocating. But the cost is paid mentally by the autistic person, which is essentially saying stop being autistic.
Because it makes us uncomfortable. It makes the neurotypicals, the non-autistics uncomfortable. And it destroys their natural coping mechanisms, which is, you know, stimming. As we were saying, if it's hand flapping and we're walking around, do it if it helps. Why should someone else say stop? Or don't do it? I mean, they wouldn't be doing, you know, an autistic person wouldn't be stimming and flapping or whatever it is if it didn't help. That's right. Do you know what I mean? They're doing it not because, you know, not because of anything other than the fact that they're trying to regulate you. Usually, you know, they might be anxious and they're just trying to get a little bit of calmness. And what's wrong with that? Exactly. And so it forces autistic people to mask their natural selves. We talked about the masking, hiding away, basically. And it forces them to concentrate every day on trying to mimic neurotypical people, which is not what we want. But you know, sadly, this does happen quite a lot. It does. Even in this country, it still happens. Sadly, it happens a lot in the States. Because it is a big money maker, and it's all formed on misconceptions that autism is a inherently bad thing, which of course it isn't. It is a bit like saying, you know, that being Greek Cypriot is an inherently bad thing, or being white British is an inherently bad thing. I mean, that is just nonsense. Do you know what I mean? That is not, you can't say that. That is just somebody's identity. You know, and also, if you think about the Greek culture, we use our hands a lot. Like I'm talking and my hands are going. So that's also helping me
to communicate something,
Yeah.
or my voice, lucky my voice doesn't accentuate or go higher, because if you're passionate about something, then you're going to really want that point across. For someone to come along and say to me, "Oh, stop that," would annoy me.
Stop being so Greek.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sorry, you know, that's not going to happen.
I mean, that's horrendous.
Yeah.
And so it's the same sort of thing, isn't it, for autistics? I loved everything you said was perfect. I particularly, I mean, I hate ABA. I think ABA should be, essentially that should be made illegal.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why ABA is not.
But you know, saying that, if I googled it and the first thing that comes up is, I googled autistic therapies actually, and the first thing that came up, unfortunately, was ABA. So if you are a parent and you're looking for something, then please, what we say is talk to autistic people, come along to our community cafes. There's another plug. That is the most important thing to do. Forget Google.
Yeah, 100%. It really shouldn't be allowed to be listed on Google.
No,
I don't know what they're doing.
I just thought, let me just type it in and have a look. And unfortunately, that is what comes up. Yeah,
it should all be criminalised for sure, because it is causing mental health mental health problems. You know, CPTSD, PTSD, just long-term higher rates of masking, as you said, and we know that masking correlates with suicidal ideation. So what does it achieve? Nothing except harm the person in the short, medium and long term.
That's right.
Rather, we should be having therapies, using therapies to support the person to be their authentic self.
That's right.
Rather than what you want them to be. I mean, if you think about the acronym PBS, right? It stands for Positive Behaviour.
Yeah, it's so
Support.
not that. It's.
I mean, but like just. Oh dear, camera just fell. Okay, hang on. You keep talking and I'll fix it.
What you were talking about was the actual term positive behaviour therapy, which is completely not that, is it?
Yeah, it's. The thing is, who gets to decide what's positive? That's what I was going to say. Do you know what I mean?
And also rewarded for that. So if you say, "Oh, could you look at me?" and the child has real uncomfortable, doesn't want to look, doesn't want to make eye contact, and so you say, "You need to look at me right now," and then a sticker's given or something like that. That is so harmful, isn't it? Yeah. So that's saying you must make the eye contact, and it has to be right now, and then it gets all positive in their eyes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just fixing the live stream. The camera fell, so apologies for that. So I was just standing up and fixing the live stream. Thank you, Ellie. Yeah, it is ridiculous, PBS. And the thing about PBS, so-called positive behavioural support, like who gets, like as you said, who gets to decide what is positive and what is negative? Like there's only one, goal here. It's ultimately just to enable the person to be themselves, who they need to be. That's it. Your version of what is positive could be very different to what that person
harmful as well.
Yeah,
very harmful.
So it's a very thing. And the other thing about PBS last is it's very clever in the way it tries to hide itself as a positive therapy. It knows it can't call itself ABA because it might stand out, and get caught. So we've reframed it, as PBS, and actually it's a con. It's a con.
It is, and we need to highlight that so that when you do hear it, it's not what the autistic person needs at all.
Correct, yeah. So please do, I think to sum up, the thing is, please make sure you avoid any kind of ABA, PBS, anything that says behavioural therapy. That's only going to be focused on changing behaviours to, in a way that isn't natural for the autistic person. And ultimately, we shouldn't be changing behaviours. We should be understanding that behaviour is communication.
Yes,
isn't it?
Is.
Ultimately.
Yeah, it is.
So that's the thing. Go for, as you said, the speech and language therapies, the music therapies, art therapies.
The music therapies at the community cafe.
We have amazing.
Which is on Sunday.
Yeah, we have music.
That's
amazing.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, we'll probably have to pick this up on another episode. But the other really important thing to go for is finding other autistic-led communities
Yes.
and spaces like the community cafes, of course, but finding other autistic people that will help you feel that you can unmask and be yourself. That is the best therapy, really.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? So there are lots of things, but these other therapies, just to say again, music therapy, art therapy, drama therapy, whatever it is you do, try to find the versions that are neurodivergent affirming. And if you're not sure, just simply ask the question. Find what if you found an art therapist, for example, ask them out, how are you neurodivergent affirming? And if they don't know what that means, the therapist is not going to be a good option, unfortunately, or is unlikely to be. You know, you've got to give them a chance potentially, but you know, it's a bad sign. Okay, well, how much time do we have left? A few more minutes. I mean, ultimately, you know, your question earlier about what are some of the best ways to support an autistic person with their mental health, you know, ultimately I think in many respects we've answered it. You know, enable the person to be their authentic self, you know, enable them to regulate and enable environments that are going to adapt to the sensory profiles, you know, find supportive mechanisms that help the person communicate in the way that works for them. And you know, enable them to find other autistic people. If you do all these things, you're going to stand a much better chance than if you don't do any of them, and if you do any of the so-called behavioural stuff. You know, obviously everything we've said is being, you know, we're being idealistic about it all, and in reality, on the ground, it's stressful, it's costly, it's timely, it's difficult, but ultimately, it's going to be worth it if you want to support the well-being of your family member or yourself, or whoever it ultimately is.
And of course, you know, services are stretched, and lists and are long, waiting lists are long, etc. But again, if you do find people that are accepting and other autistic people, there's some kind of strength and empowerment, and especially with parents talking about things, not being alone is so important. Finding that space, that safe space, is so important.
100%. I'd just like to add another point that Bobby has made here, finally. Just because you're an autistic person or you've got an autistic child doesn't necessarily mean they need any therapies. Do you know what I mean? It could be that they, you know, they're, you know, but it's not by default, oh, they're autistic, they must have therapies. You know, it's just if you think that there's some actions that you think would support the well-being of that person, and you know, would be supportive, that would be it, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
It's the same thing with neurotypical people. By default, just because you're neurotypical doesn't mean to say you need therapies, but some neurotypical people do need therapies, you know, so it all depends. Ultimately, you know, being autistic is a beautiful thing to celebrate. It's an identity, a beautiful identity, and we should just support and be compassionate and kind and respectful, and that's it. All right then, is there anything else to say?
No, I think
after that slight technical hiccup earlier with the camera falling, sorry about that. I see, if you tuned into your live stream, that was
there we go.
That was the environment failing us. But yeah, if you tuned into the live stream, you would have seen that little funny blooper. You never know what you're going to get if you tune into the live stream. All right, so I suppose we should wrap up. Thank you for everyone for listening, both on the radio and the live stream. Our next show will take place on the 5th of December at 7 p.m, which, as always, is the first Thursday of every month. We'll be live streaming it again, which, as I said many times now, you can access the live stream on facebook.com/London Autism Group Charity. And I'd also like to remind you that we do have lots of community cafes, so if you'd like to come along, meet myself and Ellie and others in the community, you're welcome to do that. We currently have them in Southgate, Islington, Ealing, Woodford and Grays, which is in Essex, and I'm really proud to announce that on the 16th... Do
you need a drum roll?
Yeah, drum roll would be good, thanks. That we are also opening a new community cafe in Lewisham.
Wow, amazing. There is a Greek community in Lewisham, South London.
Right, there you go. So any Greek Cypriots listening down there, or whoever it is that's listening down there, please come along. You'll find details of when and where that is on our website, which is londonautismgroupcharity.org. And let's also not forget about our monthly adult activity day for autistic adults at the Holy Sepulchre Church in the City of London. That is such an amazing, beautiful space, and it's for autistic adults specifically. Really, really enjoyable, beautiful environment.
Really great activities, isn't
really
it?
Lovely. We have lovely activities down there, so come along if you're interested. And again, the details of our community cafes and our activity days. And also we are now starting to do speaking events as well. So little sort of mini conferences with expert talk speakers about different topics. All of this stuff you can find information about at our website. Thanks again to my lovely co-host Ellie. Also big thanks to Tony Neofido in the background as always, and James Gordon for his editorial input, and of course the most important, all of you lovely listeners. And finally, stay tuned for the amazing Andonis Procopio, who's up next. Thank you very much. Have a great month.